All right, welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Madisonville Marine, G3, Skeeter, Godfrey Aqua Patio, Suncatcher Pontoons, Hurricane Deck Boats, on and on and on. Whatever kind of boat you're interested in, make or model, you can check them all out in one place, Madisonville Marine. There is no better place to buy a boat, folks, because of their selection, their pricing, and their customer service. They've been down there in Madisonville for 45 years. They'll be there for 45 more. MadMarine.com and Madisonville Marine at Highway 411 North in Madisonville. Okay. Gentlemen, we know that Jeremy Pruitt wound up taking a very hands-on approach with Tyson Helton his first year when Helton was the offense coordinator. Right down to the fact that he was looking at the play sheet and walking around with it in those last couple of games. Now, Helton's replacement, Jim Chaney, is hearing that he should run the ball more. He run it more consistently. That's 1 week. And then the next week, he's being told we need more shots down the field. Here is what Jeremy Pruitt said this week about the offense. I think what we have to do is call the plays that we rep in practice. That's an interesting little dig. Call the plays that we've got to be more aggressive. We never threatened Arkansas down the field. We didn't make them cover us all over the field, and we've got to do a much better job of that as a staff in making a team cover us all 53 1/3 yards and vertical down the field too. Okay, I don't disagree with that. I will point out, though, that Pruitt went on and on about a third down play earlier in the season that literally covered 53 1/3 yards, and he didn't like that wide pass. But I don't have a problem with what he said. My question is, would an assistant coach have a problem with what he's saying? Is he a backseat driver? Is there a problem with a backseat driver?
Yeah, I think he's a backseat driver. I definitely think that. I mean, he's always calling that. It's kind of one of those things you go, well, Coach, you know you have the option to speak up during the game and say, throw it deep. I mean, heck, Al Davis at the Raiders every once in a while would call on the phone and ring. Assistant coach would pick it up, and every player knew that means they were throwing it deep. I mean, so you have the power, if you're the head coach, to decide how a certain set of plays go. So saying at the end of the game, we should have done that, we should have done that, you know, you're watching the game too, but unfortunately, maybe because you're having to coach the defensive line, you're not able to speak up and say those things to the offensive coordinator during the game because you're over there coaching the defensive line.
Am I making too much of this? The fact that he kind of second guesses some of these guys, specifically offensive coordinators, but do you see a problem with this or no? You may disagree that he's a backseat driver. You may say this is like other coaches here. I don't remember Fulmer doing this or Majors doing this a lot, but thoughts?
No, I think that aggravates coaches. I think if you want to take that into the meeting room or on the practice field or wherever, and you have issues with it and you want to second guess it, but I agree with Will. Now, before the game or during the game, you ought to make your intentions clear. But I guarantee you Jim Chaney didn't appreciate being called out like that. And I bet you Derek Ansley hadn't been appreciative of saying that the secondary hadn't had a good game all year. If you want to do that behind closed doors, that's one thing. But when you start airing it out a little bit and everybody knows who you're talking about, yeah, they got feelings too, and I think it bothers those assistants.
I remember Steve Spurrier when he's doing his post-game press conference and he didn't like the way something was done. They asked him about it. He said, well, hang on, let's get the offensive coordinator in here, or whoever it was, I forget at the time. But he actually brought the other guy in, just dragged him in here, shoot him. This isn't to that extent, but it's still something I would figure most coaches wouldn't want to deal with. If you're working for Nick Saban and you're winning championships and you know your resume is getting built up to where maybe somebody like Tennessee will hire you to be a head coach someday, that's one thing to take that. I don't know if I'd take it from this guy with his resume and where you are right now. Your thoughts, Josh?
Well, maybe that's why we had the first two segments of the show today and where things are. Maybe you're seeing a unified staff in some area, right? So, yeah, I would agree with everything that Will and Jimmy said. And I would also say maybe it's a cop-out, but just look at the results. The results on the scoreboard aren't good enough. The results in the standings aren't good enough. And who's the one coach we hear from? Jeremy Pruitt. We heard a little bit in the offseason. I know they speak to the quarterback club, but we don't hear from assistant coaches. The voice of what goes on with Tennessee football is Jeremy Pruitt, and that's going to be the case with Nick Saban. Nick Saban has the results to go with it. There is the gain for the assistants. There are long-term benefits to going along with the Saban plan. That's not really the case right here at Tennessee.
You know, here's another angle to this. There are a lot of people that want to just throw this staff out, start from scratch, fire this guy, fire that guy. All right, well, first of all, you've got COVID, which we talked about last week. I think, could be wrong, but I think it's going to be difficult for UT to fire a bunch of assistant coaches this year. Mm-hmm. But let's say you did. Let's say you got rid of them. Pruitt's going to be on a hot seat next year. So you're going to have to find guys who, A, will come in and they're going to say, I want a multi-year contract. So that's going to be hanging over you as well. That's how you got Sal Sinceri here with Derek
Swiss
Dooley.
cheese, Sal, yeah.
Yeah. But now this adds another element. How many coaches, if they're looking at this and they look at the turnover on the staff through 3 years and they see the second guessing publicly of staff members, how many folks who are good at what they do are going to say, yeah, sign me up, I want some of that? I don't think this helps you in terms of going out and finding new assistants, even if you are able to get rid of some guys this year.
Yeah, and hasn't he done that? I mean, didn't we talk about how many of the people in the staff have done turnover and left and gotten new guys? So we've rotated this staff more than once already. So I mean, doing it again, does that really fix the problem? I look at it this way. That's not the answer at this point. They either got to figure out if the man at the top is their answer, or they got to figure out a new direction to go.
Let me bring up one other thing that I think we'll discuss whether or not we think this is fair or not. Brent Hubbs at VolQuest wrote something, and I think we've all done this at one time or another. You write something in an article, and one line catches everybody's attention. And when you're writing it, it's like, well, that's not the focus here, but it's what everyone goes to. He wrote something at volquest.com this week where he said that Jeremy Pruitt has made it clear over his time at Tennessee that if something happens to him here, he can always go back to Alabama as defensive coordinator. Okay, now, people got, VolQuest has a message board, people got fired up with that. Brent said, no, he's not saying it in an ugly way. He's not daring anyone to fire him. A lot of people who were angry anyway didn't like hearing it. There are some comparisons to be made there to Jerry Green, who famously told our own Isaiah Victor when he met with the team for the first time, he said, hey, if it doesn't work out here, they can fire me. I'll go live on the beach, which he did. Is this just the kind of thing that takes off when a coach is losing? Or is there some danger in Jeremy Pruitt letting anyone know, I can always go back to Alabama?
I think there's danger in anyone knowing, because people want you to think about this as you're going to die on this mountaintop, right? I mean, that all else has been burned, all the bridges behind you. You're going forward as you're going to make this work. And that saying is always saying, well, not killing all my bridges off. I've got a path out of here fast and easy, and I can pick up my bags and I go get paid again. So I think regardless of this is not a good thing to say when you're winning or losing or any of that, because it all seems to that other group. By the way, it is one of your rivals that you haven't beaten in a while that you're saying you're going to go to. That doesn't help either. So I think it's always going to be seen, just like the guys that didn't take pay cuts. This is one of those moments and moves that says, you're not really a Tennessee person. You're not really caring about the Big Orange. It's about you and not about the team.
When Cortez landed in the New World, he burned his ships.
That's right.
The interesting thing, and I have no reason to doubt Brent Hubbs on this, but if Pruitt said this, there's also an arrogance there. That's kind of saying that I don't care what Nick's doing down there or how well he's doing, he'll blow up whoever his defensive coordinator is to bring me back. I don't know that he would. I may be wrong. Gentlemen, your thoughts on that? Is that something that's a concern for a coach to be saying that?
I wouldn't say it. And the thing about Jerry Green is he would say things like that even when he was winning, right?
And in public.
And if you don't know what his record was, he'll tell you what it was. But so, yeah, even when you're winning and saying stuff like that, I think it could backfire on you. And he may have said it innocently enough.
Right.
Obviously, Pruitt has had a lot of success as a defensive coordinator at several different stops, Alabama, Florida State, and Georgia. But I think it's best to kind of stay away from those kind of comments. I don't think he was threatening, okay, fine, if you don't like me, I'm going back to Alabama and they'll take me. But I think you probably ought to just stay away from comments about other jobs.
Yeah, fans are going to look for reasons to get excited and back the coach when you're winning. And if you're not winning, they'll look for reasons to get really upset. And comments that you make in public, those can really come back to bite you. We've seen it in Tennessee before, and maybe we're seeing it again.
A little later, we'll talk about some comments from Jeremy Pruitt that may be coming back to bite him. We'll discuss that a little later. Up next, what are the biggest reasons behind Tennessee's 2020 regression? We're going to show you some numbers in this next segment to kind of pinpoint the areas that have to be fixed, and then we'll talk about how many of them can actually be fixed on the quick. That's next. Coming back on the Sports Source.